Welcome back all. So today we're gonna go ahead and just continue from where we left off. I added some code, didn't save it here. Anyway, we need to take a look at the create.component.ts. So create.component.ts, you will need to make this file. And here we're gonna go ahead and construct our component. So we are importing onInit and onDestroy. We have used them before. We will need them for ngOnInit and ngOnDestroy methods down below. Create.component.html. That is the HTML which is going to be created right here. So it's not that big, very small. I'll explain it in a moment. Next, down below, immediately we are exporting a class. So this class will basically implement onInit and onDestroy interfaces, which means that it also must implement the methods that it contains. Hence the ngOnInit and ngOnDestroy. Oops. Let me just go ahead and move this. Anyway, private account ID. So this is a private variable of type number. We will use this variable in order to store the ID of the account from the query parameter if it exists. And if it does not exist, it should be, it's basically going to be none or some nonsensical thing like that. Anyway, the underscore param sub, which is of type any, it's also a private variable, so we will store the subscription to the route parameters so that we have the ability to basically unsubscribe when the class itself is destroyed. Let me just scroll down a little bit. So here we have a constructor, and we are injecting the activated route service, so the activated route service, into the underscore route private variable. And down below, if you remember from before, this component will be basically, this method will be called when the component is created. So ngOnInit. And we have a body here, and then within the body we have another function as well. So function within the function, the arrow-based functions that we have used before. So all that this does, that this code here does, is fetch the account parameter, which contains the ID of the account. This is basically how we do it. First of all, we will create a subscription to the, well, basically just subscribe to the underscore route.params right here. And then we will use the arrow function. Then, well, it won't actually be used straight away. It will be called when the parameters of the route actually change. And those parameters of the route will be stored into the params variable here. So this statement is true for the route and query parameters both, so not just for one set. Anyway, params, as I said, contains the new route and query parameters upon change when the function is called. These parameters will be passed by the router. Now, we fetch the account parameter that's right here. So we use params, and then we state that we would like to take the account parameter from params, and we use the plus, which is basically a quick and dirty way to convert the account into a number, which is then stored into the account ID. No big deal there. And down below, we'll just unsubscribe. So ngOnDestroy param dot underscore param sub dot unsubscribe. So we are simply unsubscribing. Gone. Okay, next we need to go into the component.html. I've just moved this one. And we're gonna go, I think I've opened the wrong one. Anyway, now I'm right. So create.component.html. Have a header here, so just create transaction. That's not really that important. But down below, these two statements. So the first statement, basically what we are trying to achieve here is that if the account ID does not exist, So if from our previous file, if this account ID basically does not exist, if it's something nonsensical, then basically the account ID will be NaN, so NaN, which stands for not a number. And this will be printed out onto the screen. So there is no preset for this account. So account ID, yeah, it will be true, and then it will be false, and then we will negate it, and then it will become true, and this will be printed out onto the screen. However, if the account ID does indeed exist, then this will be printed out onto the screen. So account is set ID, and then in bold letters, we will actually fetch the account ID and print it out onto the screen as well. I'll show you how all this looks like on the site as soon as we're done with just a few minor modifications. So go into the details.component.ts, details.component.ts, and router directives. So this is a new thing which was imported here. We need it for the router link, which we will use in the HTML. And we just added it basically here to the directives. That's it. There isn't anything else to do. Next up, we go into the details.component.html, where we need to alter only one line. 49. Yep, there we go. I've actually written the number of the line that needs to be altered. So this is the button that we shall create and add. So we want this button to take us to the creation of the transaction. When we click on it, we want to go to where the transaction can actually be created for that particular account, which means that we will have to use the query parameters and preset the account ID. How do we do this? Well, we simply set the query parameter. And so you have the router link, and then it goes transactions, which is the main route, and then you have the child route, and then we will set one of the query parameters. So the query parameter is account, and we will initialize it to account._account.id. Account is another variable, and .id is that which is contained within the array. One of the elements. Anyway, down below, this is nothing. This is just CSS, how we would like our button to be colored. So primary, I do believe that it's going to be blue. And then add transaction. That's what's going to be written within the button itself. And the small modification here within the CSS. So this number, you can just change it to 12 because we want to move our button from the bottom. And then let's go, just save all the files and go on to the site. Okay, so I'm already here in this place. And if okay, so welcome to Personal Finance. Let's go ahead and look at the accounts. So there are two accounts here. I'm going to go ahead and click on the first one. You can click on the second one, doesn't matter. And this is the button that is added here. So it says add transaction. Account ID is 1. So if I click on add transaction, account set ID 1, create transaction. And up here is the interesting part of it all. Let me just go ahead and actually copy this. So why did I do this? Well, because I want you to take a look at it. You have the HTTP localhost, blah, 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 transactions, create, child route. That's fine. But you have a semicolon here. And Angular has a rather unique way, well, maybe not that unique, but I don't know any other framework or programming language for web development that actually uses semicolons to separate query parameters. Maybe there are, correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't really matter. So, as I said, Angular 2 uses a rather unique way to separate the query parameters from the route itself. So you have the semicolon here, and then you have the query parameter. It says account equals 1. Usually you would have something like a question mark here. And you don't need the ampersand signs or anything like that that's used in other frameworks. You just separate them by placing another semicolon here, and then you can add, then, I don't know, if you have more than one query parameter, you can just say line, I don't know, 50. So lines 50, something like this. So you can add a lot of them here. And I just wanted you to take a look at that. If I go ahead and delete the account equals 1 and just leave the create, it says there is no preset for this account. This is why it doesn't seem that important now. It doesn't seem all that the account has a preset, etc. But when you click on add transaction, you want to take you to a reference point that is related to everything that is that account. So when you want to, if we click on add transaction, we want to be able to add the transaction for this particular account, nothing else. And we don't want to specify for which account we're adding the transaction upon clicking add transaction button. We want it to take us there in an automated fashion. Sure, I guess there must be some other ways of doing this simpler, but I wanted to demonstrate the query parameters here and how they actually function. Anyway, I'm gonna bid you farewell here, and I hope to see you in the follow-up.